Welcome back. Matthew's here with the business. Matthew, we're going to start with ArcelorMittal and that looming deadline this Saturday.
Yes, that's right. The company has given the French government until this Saturday to find someone to buy 2 blast furnaces at its plant in the northeast of France. Now, if they don't, they will close them permanently, which will see more than 600 jobs go. And these workers we can see here, some of them were camping outside the finance ministry in Paris on Thursday. The French government says it wants to be able to sell the whole site and that it's found a potential buyer, but the company is resisting that because it says the other parts of the site are essential for its operations in the rest of France.
Now, there's some reports also that the French government might nationalise the site, or try to at least.
Yes, Paris saying that that remains an option, and the head of the country's business federation has called that option scandalous, in fact. But for workers at some other struggling French companies, talk of nationalisation is seen as a possible way out of their own woes.
They say hope floats. Some employees here at Chantier de l'Atlantique fear their livelihood could be sinking and hope the shipyard will soon be nationalized.
Better to be nationalized than look for another job or to be sold to some company and have them shut up shop.
It could be a solution, but if we don't have any orders, then what's the point?
In 2008, France bought a 33% stake of STX from a South Korean group. Then President Nicolas Sarkozy visited the site and proudly called it a strategic asset. He tried to reassure workers their sector had already been hit by the financial crisis. But today it's anything but blue skies for the shipyard. There are no new orders and 30% of the workforce has lost their job. Some here wonder if the state didn't do enough and now nationalization is being considered elsewhere. At ArcelorMittal's Florange site, a Petroplus refinery, and even for Peugeot Citroën. But those representing bosses say such a proposal violates the principle of private property.
Considering nationalisation, even having a debate about it, is really scandalous.
The socialist government and ArcelorMittal are at odds, but both sides are trying to find a solution by Saturday.
Now, looking to the Eurozone, Germany's parliament will vote today on the latest bailout for Greece. How's that going to work out for Merkel?
Yes, well, the government is optimistic. Of course, this latest bailout package agreed by the country's lenders earlier this week, and the agreement means that Greece will get a much-needed injection of 34 billion euros by mid-December. But this approval from the German parliament and other EU parliaments, in fact, is necessary. So they'll vote later on Friday, but the German finance minister confident that it will go through.
Well, moving to the US and better news on the economy. It's doing better than expected, certainly.
That's right. In the 3 months to September, the economy grew by 2.7%, and that was better than the government had previously said, and it was certainly up on what happened in the second quarter when it grew by 1.3%. In fact, it's the fastest pace of growth since late 2011.
Obviously helping to lift those markets, certainly in the US.
Yes, markets on Wall Street all up on Thursday's trading session between 0.3 and 0.6%, as you can see there. And Asian markets are still open, and for the most part, they are up as well. Just the Kospi there in South Korea slipping back. The Nikkei in Tokyo up about 0.5%.
And the Japanese stock market also lifted by a new stimulus package.
Yeah, now markets tend to like a bit of stimulus, and they've got 880 billion yen worth from the government this Friday. That's about 8.25 billion euros. That's for social programs and job creation. Now, the reason that they are doing this is because the economy is stalling there. In fact, it shrank by 3.5% in the most recent quarter. Now, there's a lot of data out on the Japanese economy on Friday. Let me give you this piece of it, which is factory output. That was actually up 1.8% in October, better than expected, but the government's saying there that's actually not consistent with the overall trend, which is still downwards. Well, let's get some more of the day's company news, and staying in Japan, shares are up in Hitachi and Mitsubishi. The two companies are merging their thermal power businesses. Demand for electricity generating equipment is growing in Asia. This move is designed to help them better compete with rivals General Electric and Siemens.
And a free trade deal between Japan and Europe is a step closer. The EU has agreed to start negotiations on a new agreement, but not everyone's happy about the proposal. European car makers say they're worried about a rise in Japanese car imports.
And lawsuits continue to fly following bad news from Hewlett-Packard. HB has announced a $9 billion write-down on its purchase of the software firm Autonomy. Well, now the company's accountants could be sued. The lawsuit says that Deloitte and KPMG failed to spot that the company was overvalued.
Well, following the Leveson inquiry report out yesterday, Matthew, you've been looking at the impact that it's the press standards on the newspaper business industry.
Yes, and in particular at News Corp, which of course is at the centre of all of this. They were the owners of the now defunct News of the World, and the company's owned by Rupert Murdoch. Well, that inquiry Karen mentioned by Lord Leveson had some harsh words for the company.
It was the public revulsion at the hacking of murdered teenager Millie Dowler's phone that led to the inquiry into media ethics. Its final report criticises the editors and managers at News International and News Corporation, the owners of the News of the World, which had targeted Dowler's voicemails. Questions were there to be asked, and simple denials should not have been considered sufficient, Lord Justice Leveson said in his report. This suggests a cover-up by somebody, and at more than one level. At the top, News Corp owner Rupert Murdoch, under fire from the inquiry for failing to react to a 2008 court judgment that showed what it calls casual and cavalier journalism at the News of the World. That Mr Murdoch was not apparently familiar with it says something about the degree to which his organisation engages with the ethical direction of its newspapers, the report says. Lord Leveson found that Mr Murdoch's alleged power over British politicians was largely implicit, and that political leaders knew what they were doing when they held meetings with him. Not sufficient to silence the media magnate's critics.
We've seen how Murdoch has used the power of owning more than a third of our press to corrupt our institutions and undermine democracy. We need to ensure that that reform includes limits to ownership to make sure that no one ever owns more than a fifth of our media again.
There are still several phone hacking court cases underway involving senior figures in the Murdoch empire. Former News International head Rebecca Brooks was among those in court on conspiracy charges on Thursday.
But Matthew, interestingly, this hasn't affected the News Corp share at all. No,
in fact, it's had the opposite effect to what many people expected. People thought this company was really going to be in trouble, but look at the share price. This is over the last year, and it is up. It was up 1.5% in trading on Thursday, and in fact, since July 2011, when a lot of this was all going on, it's up 20%. Now, the reason for that is actually partly because of this, because this whole scandal has forced News Corp to announce that it's going to spin off its newspaper business into a separate company. Now, a lot of investors had been hoping for that for a long time because they wanted the company to focus much more on their much more lucrative and growing television businesses. So that's been helping the News Corp share price, as we saw there.
And finally, we have a birthday announcement for you, which we're going to have a listen to now.
Well, he needs no introduction, does he?
Absolutely
And
not.
of course, the record there was Thriller, the album. And I promise you, Karen, you're going to have this in your head all day now.
Am I? Well, that's a good one to have. I've heard of worse in the mornings, you know, so this is good.
That's true. I've already had it. Well, this album was released on the 30th of November, 1982, 30 years ago. It was his sixth album, and it went on to sell 110 million copies worldwide, which is the best-selling album ever. It also, that video, which was in fact 13 minutes long, sort of broke all the rules as well for music videos, so it really gave a big boost to the video industry. And as well, the music industry was really struggling at the time, and this record is credited with helping turn around the fortunes as well. So not just the music that people like, but also the impact that it had on the business as well.
Well, I'm sure it'll inspire you to dance out of the studio or moonwalk at least. Thank you, Matthew Warren. That's the latest for now. Do stay tuned to France 24.